The smell of gun oil and metal had long since stopped bothering Staff Sergeant Maya Reeves. After 6 years at Forward Operating Base Salerno, the scent had become as familiar as her own skin. She sat on a worn stool in the armory's fluorescent-lit workspace, carefully cleaning a disassembled M4 carbine with methodical precision. Every spring, every pin, every surface received the same meticulous attention it had for 2,190 days straight. Tuesday. Just another Tuesday in eastern Afghanistan, where the mountains loomed like silent sentinels and the air tasted of dust even in the climate-controlled armory. Maya preferred it this way, predictable, orderly, safe. The rhythm of her work was almost meditative. Disassemble, clean, inspect, reassemble, log, repeat. Soldiers came and went, picking up weapons for training or deployment, barely glancing at the woman behind the cage who handed them their tools of war. She'd become invisible, and that suited her just fine. "Eves, you're like a ghost in here," Private Chen had joked last week. "You ever actually leave this place?" She'd smiled politely, signed out his rifle, and returned to her maintenance logs. What Chen didn't know, what nobody knew, was that Maya had chosen invisibility. Before the army, she'd been a competitive shooter, winning state championships, drawing attention and expectations she'd never wanted. The pressure had been suffocating. Here in her armory, she was just a technician. No spotlights, no pressure. No one asking her to be exceptional. The wall clock read 13:47 hours. In 13 minutes, she'd take her afternoon break, grab coffee from the DFAC, and return to finish the quarterly inventory. Her world ran on schedules and regulations, every hour accounted for, every action documented. It was boring. It was perfect. The armory door slammed open, with enough force to rattle the weapon racks. Maya's head snapped up, her hand instinctively moving toward the sidearm at her hip. Standing in the doorway was a man who looked like he'd crawled out of the mountains themselves. An Army Ranger captain, based on the scroll on his shoulder but barely recognizable as military. His uniform was faded and dusty, his tactical pants torn at one knee. A thick beard obscured his jaw, well beyond regulation, and his eyes held the kind of exhaustion that came from weeks without real sleep. But those eyes were also burning with purpose. Staff Sergeant Reeves. His voice was rough, like gravel grinding together. "That's right." Maya stood slowly, her mind cataloging details. No visible wounds, but favoring his left leg slightly. Holster on his thigh, SIG P320. The grip worn smooth from use, not just carrying. His hands bore fresh cuts, and mountain dust caked the creases of his knuckles. This man had been in the field, and recently. "Can I help you, sir?" He stepped inside and closed the door behind him with deliberate care, then turned the lock. The click echoed in the confined space. Maya's pulse quickened. "Sir, I need you to unlock that door." In a minute, he approached the counter that separated her workspace from the front area, pulling out a tablet from his cargo pocket. "May 14th, 3 months ago, you signed out Rifle Alpha 73, serial number M2010 ESR 1147, an experimental extended service rifle variant." He set the tablet on the counter, his gaze never leaving her face. "I need to know what you did with it." The world seemed to tilt slightly. Maya's mouth went dry, her palms suddenly slick with sweat. That rifle, that date, the memory she'd buried under 3 months of routine maintenance and forced forgetfulness came rushing back like a flash flood. The helicopter ride at dawn, the colonel she'd never seen before, the ridge overlooking the valley, the impossible distance, the single shot that changed everything. Her voice cracked. She cleared her throat, forcing steadiness she didn't feel. "I don't know what you're talking about. I sign out dozens of rifles every week. I'd have to check the logs." "Don't," his voice was quiet but carried an edge sharp enough to cut. "Don't lie to me, not about this." He tapped the tablet and satellite imagery appeared. A topographical map of the Kunar province, a red dot marking a ridge position, another marking a valley 4 kilometers away. Then ballistics data, trajectory calculations, wind speed measurements, terminal velocity estimates. Finally, a grainy photograph of a body, a single catastrophic wound visible even in the low resolution. Someone fired a shot at 3,820 meters that day, he continued, his voice tight with controlled emotion. 3,820 meters, that's 2.37 miles. The confirmed world record is 3,540 meters. This shot doesn't exist in any official record. It shouldn't be possible. He leaned forward, knuckles white as he gripped the counter edge. My ranger team was conducting reconnaissance in that valley when the shot was fired. The target, a high-value Taliban commander, dropped dead in the middle of a meeting. The chaos that followed. He paused, jaw clenching, working through something painful. My team was ambushed, coordinated, planned. They knew we were there. 3 of my brothers made it out. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. My actual brother, Sergeant First Class Marcus Webb, didn't. His last transmission mentioned impossible fire from the western ridge before his radio went dead. Maya felt the blood draining from her face. Her hands gripped the edge of her stool to keep from shaking. All she'd known was the target, a shape in a scope, wind calculations, the mathematics of death at extreme distance. No one had told her about rangers in the valley. No one had mentioned collateral operations. She'd pulled the trigger and been extracted within 30 minutes, then immediately debriefed by the colonel with explicit orders. This mission never happened. I don't, she started, but the captain cut her off. The ballistic signature matches the ammunition lot signed out with that rifle, specialized. Winchester Magnum rounds, experimental load. Only your armory had access to that specific batch. He straightened, and for a moment she saw the full weight of his exhaustion, his grief, his desperate determination. I've spent 3 months following ghosts and whispers, Staff Sergeant. Every official channel has stonewalled me. Every inquiry gets buried. But I traced that ammunition and it leads here. To you. To that day. His hand moved to a folder tucked in his vest, but he didn't pull it out yet. My name is Captain David Torres. Marcus Webb is my younger brother, and I don't believe he's dead. Maya's breath caught. What? Recent intelligence intercepts from Taliban communications. They're talking about the American ghost in the mountains. A soldier who moves like smoke, hitting their patrols and then vanishing. Someone who knows the terrain like he was born there. Tor's eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her want to look away, but she couldn't. Marcus is alive. He's been dark for 3 months, and I think whoever made that shot, whoever caused the chaos that day, holds the key to finding him. The walls of her safe, predictable armory seemed to close in. Maya's mind raced through the implications, the connections she didn't want to make. That shot had been ordered from the top. Classification higher than anything she'd ever seen. The colonel's warning had been crystal clear. Speak about this mission and her career was over. Possibly her freedom. Possibly her life. But a ranger was missing. A man with a family, with a brother standing in front of her, had been caught in the aftermath of her bullet. Sir, she swallowed hard, years of following orders warring with something deeper, the knowledge that invisibility was no longer an option. If I did know something, I was given direct orders, classified orders. I could face court-martial just for. I know, Tor's expression softened slightly. I know what I'm asking, but Maya, the use of her first name startled her. That shot you may or may not have made, it was perfect. Impossible but perfect. Whoever pulled that trigger isn't just a weapons tech logging serial numbers. And whoever ordered it, whoever had the authority to classify it that deeply, they're connected to what happened to Marcus. He finally pulled out the folder, opened it, and showed her a photograph. A young man in Ranger tan, grinning at the camera with the easy confidence of someone who'd never met a challenge he couldn't overcome. He had Tor's eyes. "Help me find my brother," Tor said quietly. "Please." Maya looked at the photograph, then at the captain who just shattered her carefully constructed world. Her hand trembled as she reached out and slowly turned the lock on the armory door, the click of the deadbolt sealing more than just the room. "I made the shot," she whispered, and with those 4 words, Staff Sergeant Maya Reeves stopped being invisible forever. Captain Tor's body sagged slightly, as if he'd been holding his breath for months and could finally exhale. He pulled a chair from against the wall and sat down heavily, the metal legs scraping against the concrete floor. Maya remained standing, her confession hanging in the air between them like smoke. "Tell me everything," Tors said, pulling out a small notebook, paper, not digital. Smart, Maya thought. Paper couldn't be hacked or traced. Maya moved to the small coffee maker in the corner of her workspace, her hands needing something to do. She poured 2 cups, the familiar ritual helping to steady her nerves. When she handed one to Tors, their eyes met, and she saw something in his expression that surprised her, not judgment or anger but understanding. He knew what it cost to break orders. "May 13th, she began, settling onto her stool. 2200 hours. I was finishing end-of-day inventory when a colonel I'd never seen before walked into my armory. No appointment, no warning. He had 2 MPs with him and orders signed by someone so far up the chain of command I couldn't even verify the signature." Tors wrote carefully, his handwriting surprisingly neat. "He knew things about me," Maya continued, staring into her coffee. "Things that weren't in my official file, my competition shooting background. I won the National Long-Range Championship 3 years running before I enlisted. Set a record at 2,100 yards in Colorado. I'd buried that life, Captain. I joined the Army to be ordinary, to disappear into routine. But somehow he knew." "What was his name?" "Colonel Richard Ashford, Defense Intelligence Agency, or so his credentials said." The name tasted bitter. "He told me I'd been selected for a time-sensitive operation. High-value target, narrow window, extreme technical difficulty. He said every sniper team in theater had assessed the shot and deemed it impossible." Tors looked up sharply. "Impossible how?" Maya set down her coffee and moved to her workbench, pulling out a topographical map of Kunar province. She'd studied this terrain obsessively in the 3 months since, trying to understand what she'd done, trying to justify it to herself. "The target was meeting in this valley," she pointed to a depression between 2 ridges. "Taliban commanders, local warlords, moving HVTs, standard surveillance operation, or so I thought. But the only position with line of sight was here." Her finger traced to a ridge on the western side. 3,820 meters away, nearly 2.5 miles. Tors whistled low. "In the mountains with variable winds." "Exactly. The world record shot is 3,540 meters, made in ideal conditions on flat terrain in Iraq. This was different, shooting downward at a 47-degree angle, through 3 different wind layers, with temperature gradients affecting ballistic performance." Maya's voice grew steadier as she moved into the technical details, the mathematics that had always made sense when nothing else did. Every sniper team refused because the variables were too extreme. Success rate was estimated at less than 2%. "But you took it." "I didn't have a choice." Maya met his eyes. "The colonel made that clear. He said this was a direct national security imperative. The target had information about an imminent attack on U.S. forces, 24 hours, maybe less. They needed him neutralized immediately, and I was their only option." She pulled out a drawer and retrieved a file she'd hidden under maintenance manuals. Her own private documentation of that day, assembled in violation of every order she'd received. "They flew me out at 300 hours on May 14th. Black helicopter, no markings. Dropped me on that ridge with a spotter I'd never met, a master sergeant who barely spoke. He had the environmental monitoring equipment. I had the rifle, Alpha 73, an experimental M2010 variant I'd been testing for 3 months. Tors leaned forward, absorbed in every word. "The rifle was extraordinary," Maya said, and for a moment her professional appreciation overshadowed everything else. Enhanced barrel with proprietary rifling, custom action, integrated ballistic computer linked to a scope with atmospheric sensors. It was designed specifically for extreme long-range precision. I'd fired maybe 200 rounds through it, knew its characteristics better than any weapon I'd ever used. And the ammunition. Special load, Winchester Magnum but custom powder charge experimental bullet design with enhanced ballistic coefficient. Each round cost more than a car. She opened her file and showed him the ammunition specification sheet she'd photographed. Only 50 rounds existed. I had 5 with me that morning. Tors photographed the document with his phone, his movements quick and efficient. We got into position at 4:27 hours. Dawn came at 5:31. The target arrived at 6:47, right on schedule. Maya's voice grew quieter, too perfectly on schedule. I remember thinking that was odd. Taliban commanders don't usually run on time, but I was focused on the shot. The wind was variable, shifting every 30 seconds, temperature rising as the sun hit the valley. I had to calculate everything. Wind drift, Coriolis effect, altitude compensation, temperature gradient, even the rotation of the Earth over the bullet's flight time. How long, Tors asked. Flight time. 7.3 seconds. Maya closed her eyes, seeing it all again. 7 seconds for the bullet to travel 3,820 meters. That's an eternity in ballistics. Everything could change, wind could gust, the target could move, atmospheric pressure could shift. I had to predict where he would be 7 seconds after I pulled the trigger. She opened her eyes and found Tors watching her with something like awe. I fired at 6:51 hours, single shot. I watched through the scope. You can actually track the bullet's vapor trail at extreme distance if conditions are right. It looked like a streak of silver cutting through the morning air, dropping, drifting slightly left as I'd calculated then. She paused. Impact. Center mass. The target dropped immediately. I'd never made a shot like that, never even attempted anything close. And then, chaos. Maya's hands clenched into fists. Through the scope, I saw the men around the target scatter. Some went for cover, others returned fire, but they were shooting at shadows. They had no idea where the shot came from. Then I saw movement on the northern ridge opposite my position. Muzzle flashes, lots of them, an ambush. Tors' jaw tightened. My brother's team. I didn't know, Maya said urgently. I swear to God, Captain, I didn't know there were friendlies in that valley. Ashford never mentioned reconnaissance assets, never said anything about coordination. He told me it was a clean shot on an isolated target. How long did you observe? Maybe 90 seconds. Then the master sergeant packed our gear and we were running for the extraction point. The helicopter was there in 4 minutes. They'd been hovering just over the ridge, rotors hot. We were back at Salerno by 7:30 hours. She pulled out another document, her debriefing report. Colonel Ashford was waiting. He took my after-action statement, had me sign non-disclosure agreements so classified I needed special clearance just to read them. He told me the mission was successful, the target was eliminated, and I was never to speak of this operation to anyone. Ever. He said I'd performed a valuable service for my country and that this would remain buried for national security reasons. Then what? Then nothing. Maya spread her hands helplessly. I went back to my armory, back to logging serial numbers and cleaning rifles. I tried to forget about it, tried to tell myself I'd done the right thing, followed orders, served my country. But I couldn't stop thinking about those 7 seconds, about how perfect that shot had been, about what I'd seen through the scope in those 90 seconds after. Tors leaned back, processing everything. You witnessed the beginning of the ambush that killed 2 of my rangers and sent my brother into hiding. I witnessed something coordinated, Maya corrected. Those Taliban fighters on the northern ridge, they weren't reacting to my shot. They were already in position, already waiting. The timing was too perfect. They knew someone would be watching that meeting. The implications hung heavy between them. You think the ambush was planned, Tors said slowly. You think someone set up your shot specifically to trigger it. I think someone used me as a diversion. Maya's voice was hard now, anger replacing fear. They knew a shot like that would cause chaos, confusion, the perfect cover for an ambush on your brother's team, and they classified everything so deeply that no one could trace it back. Tor stood abruptly and began packing, his limp more pronounced now as adrenaline gave way to exhaustion. Marcus's last transmission. He said, "Impossible fire from the western ridge." He saw your shot. Maybe he even figured out it came from our side. Which means he knew something was wrong, Maya finished. He knew the operation was compromised. Tor stopped packing and turned to face her. 3 months ago, my brother disappeared in that valley. Official story, killed in action, body not recovered. But 2 weeks ago, intelligence intercepted Taliban radio chatter. They're terrified of something in those mountains, someone who hits them hard and vanishes, someone they call the ghost. He pulled up more files on his tablet, showing her translated intercepts, blurry long-range photographs, incident reports from Taliban sources. Marcus is alive, Maya. He survived because of the chaos your shot created. It gave him a chance to escape when the ambush hit. But he didn't come home. He went dark, stayed in those mountains. And I think I know why. Why? Tor's eyes were cold as mountain ice. Because he's hunting whoever betrayed his team, whoever set up that ambush, and Colonel Richard Ashford is at the center of it all. Maya felt something shift inside her, the last remnants of her safe, invisible life crumbling away. What do you need from me? Your technical expertise, your knowledge of that rifle, that ammunition, and maybe, Tors hesitated, maybe another impossible shot when the time comes. Maya thought about the last 6 years of hiding, of being ordinary, of avoiding the spotlight and the pressure. Then she thought about a ranger alone in the mountains, hunting traitors, and a brother who refused to give up on him. "Okay," she said quietly, "let's find Marcus, and let's find out who's really pulling the triggers." Torres moved to the armory door, checked the small window to ensure no one was nearby, then returned to Maya's workspace. From his vest, he pulled out a worn folder, the edges frayed from constant handling. Inside were dozens of documents, some official, others clearly obtained through unofficial channels. "I need to show you who my brother really is," Tors said, spreading photographs across Maya's workbench. "Because understanding Marcus is key to finding him." The first photo showed a younger version of Tors standing beside a man who shared his dark eyes but had a leaner build and an easier smile. Both wore army dress uniforms, medals gleaming. This was taken 4 years ago when Marcus graduated Ranger School. Top of his class in every category, marksmanship, land navigation, tactics. But his real gift was reconnaissance. He could disappear into terrain like he was part of it. Maya studied the photograph. Marcus Webb looked almost unassuming in person, average height, lean build, nothing physically imposing. But his eyes held an intensity that the camera had captured, a focus that suggested he saw more than most people. He was assigned to 2nd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, Tors continued, pulling out service records that Maya suspected he wasn't authorized to possess. 37 combat deployments over 6 years. His specialty was deep reconnaissance, going into hostile territory ahead of main forces, gathering intelligence, painting targets for airstrikes. He spent more time behind enemy lines than in friendly territory. "How did you get these files?" Maya asked, nodding the classification markings. Tor's expression hardened. "When the army tells you your brother is KIA but can't produce a body, can't explain what happened, and classifies everything about his last mission so deeply that his own family can't get answers, you learn to ask questions through unofficial channels. I have friends, Maya. Rangers take care of their own." He pulled out a tactical map covered in handwritten notes and red circles. "This is the Pech Valley and surrounding mountains, where Marcus was operating. After the official investigation closed, I started my own. Took leave, called in favors, talked to everyone who'd operated in this region." His finger traced a pattern of red marks across the map. 3 days after the ambush, a Taliban patrol disappeared near this village. 7 men vanished without a trace. A week later, a weapons cache exploded here, 20 miles from the ambush site. Taliban blamed American drones, but there were no drone strikes logged that day. Maya leaned closer, seeing the pattern emerge. Someone's hitting Taliban assets. Not just hitting, hunting. Torres pulled out more reports. 2 weeks after the ambush, Taliban commander killed by a single rifle shot, 800 meters through a window in the middle of the night. 3 weeks, IED factory destroyed, 4 bomb makers dead, no American casualties or operations in the area. 4 weeks, local warlord who'd been feeding intelligence to the Taliban found dead in his compound, throat cut, no witnesses. He spread out translated intelligence intercepts, the pages covered in highlighted passages. The Taliban started calling him the Ghost about 6 weeks after Marcus disappeared. Listen to this one, intercepted 5 weeks ago. The American Jinn walks our mountains. He kills from the shadows and vanishes like smoke. Our fighters fear the night because of him. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. That doesn't sound like a man running for his life. That sounds like a man on a mission, Torres finished. Marcus didn't go dark because he was scared or injured. He went dark because he chose to, and I think I know why. He pulled out the final document, a detailed timeline he'd constructed by hand. Look at the pattern of attacks. They're not random. Every target Marcus has hit was connected to the ambush in some way. The patrol that disappeared. Intelligence suggests they were the advance element that spotted his team and called in the ambush. The weapons cache supplied the ammunition used against his rangers. The commander killed through the window. He coordinated the attack. Maya's mind raced, connecting the dots. He's systematically eliminating everyone involved in what happened that day. Which means he knows it was a setup. He knows someone sold out his team. Tor's voice dropped. And he's gathering evidence while he eliminates the witnesses. But why not come back? Maya asked. Why stay out there alone? Torres met her eyes and she saw the pain behind his determination. Because the betrayal came from inside. Someone with access to classified intelligence. Someone who knew Marcus's team would be watching that meeting. Someone with the authority to arrange your shot as the perfect diversion. If Marcus comes back before he has proof, the traitor will know he's alive and can arrange another accident. This time, permanently. The weight of it settled over Maya like a physical force. She thought about Colonel Ashford, his too perfect knowledge of her skills, the way everything had been arranged so precisely. You think Ashford is the traitor. I think Ashford is a key player, but he's not working alone. Torres pulled up a personnel file on his tablet. Colonel Richard Ashford, Defense Intelligence Agency. 30 years of service, multiple commendations, clearances so high I can't even verify them. He's operated in this region for 18 months, coordinating intelligence operations across eastern Afghanistan. He swiped to another file. But here's what's interesting. Ashford wasn't always DIA. He started in Army intelligence, then moved to private contracting for 7 years before being brought back in. Those 7 years, he worked for Paladin Solutions, a defense contractor with interests in rare earth mineral mining rights. Maya felt the pieces clicking together. Afghanistan has significant rare earth deposits. Worth trillions, Torres confirmed. And most of them are in Taliban-controlled areas. Now look at the HVT you eliminated, Abdul Karim Nazari. Official file says he was a Taliban commander and weapons dealer, but I dug deeper. Nazari was also a mediator between regional warlords and foreign mining interests. He controlled access to some of the richest deposits in Kunar province. Ashford had him killed to take control of mining access, Maya said, the full picture emerging. Or to eliminate someone who could expose a larger operation. Torres pulled out financial documents, bank records obtained through means Maya didn't want to know about. 3 weeks after your shot, A subsidiary of Paladin Solutions secured mineral rights to the entire valley where Nazari was killed. The deal was brokered through intermediaries, but the money trail leads back to accounts Ashford has accessed. Maya stood and began packing, her mind working through the implications. So Ashford orders my shot, which eliminates Nazari and creates chaos. Meanwhile, he's arranged for your brother's team to be in the valley as witnesses, or maybe as additional targets. The Taliban ambushes the Rangers. Everyone assumes it's just another firefight. Nazari's death gets buried in the confusion, and Ashford's contractors move in to secure the mining rights. Except Marcus survived, Torres said. And instead of coming back, he figured out enough to know he couldn't trust command. So he stayed in the mountains, using his training to hunt down everyone involved, gathering evidence. How are you sure he's even still alive? Maya asked. These intercepts could be about anyone, a holdout American, a contractor, even fiction. Torres' expression softened slightly. He pulled out his phone and played an audio file. Static, then a voice speaking in broken English. American Ghost hit our position 3 nights past. One man moving like shadow. He takes nothing, leaves no trace. Only death. The speaker paused, then added something that made Maya's blood run cold. He whispers name of dead Rangers before he kills. He is making judgment for betrayed brothers. The audio cut off. Tor's hands trembled slightly as he put the phone away. That's Marcus. He's alive, he knows what happened, and he's making them pay. But he can't do this forever. Eventually, he'll make a mistake, or Ashford will send enough assets to take him down. I need to reach him before that happens. Maya returned to the workbench, studying the maps and documents spread before them. If Marcus has been hunting these targets systematically, there should be a pattern we can predict. Where does he go next? Torres traced a line across the map. All his confirmed kills have been moving steadily northwest, toward the Pakistan border. At first, I thought he was trying to exfiltrate, but now I think he's following a trail. Each target eliminated reveals the next link in the chain. Which means the person at the end of the chain is whoever ordered the whole operation, Torres finished. The person who betrayed Marcus's team and used you as an unwitting assassin, and I think Marcus has figured out who it is. He pulled out one final document, this one heavily redacted. 2 days ago, I intercepted communications between Ashford and someone operating out of Kabul. The conversation was encrypted, but my contact managed to pull fragments. They're moving assets into position near the border. Heavy assets, contractors, black ops teams, people who can operate without accountability. Maya felt ice in her stomach. They're setting up another ambush. They know Marcus is coming. They're going to finish what they started 3 months ago. Torres looked at her with desperate intensity. That's why I need your help. Not just your technical knowledge, I need your skills. If we're going into those mountains to find Marcus before they do, we might face impossible situations. And you've already proven you can make impossible shots. I'm not a combat soldier, Maya protested. Even as part of her knew she was already committed. I'm a weapons technician. I made one shot under controlled conditions with perfect equipment. You made a world record shot that saved my brother's life, even if you didn't know it at the time, Torres countered. And you have skills beyond marksmanship. You understand weapon systems, ballistics, tactics. Marcus will need those skills when we find him. Maya looked down at her hands, hands that had cleaned and maintained thousands of weapons, hands that had pulled one trigger and changed everything. She thought about the last 6 years of hiding, of being safe and ordinary and invisible. Then she thought about a ranger alone in the mountains, betrayed by his own command, fighting a war no one knew about. When do we leave? She asked quietly. Torres allowed himself a small smile, the first she'd seen from him. Tomorrow night, but first we need to gather equipment and information. And Maya, his expression turned serious again. Once we do this, there's no going back. Ashford will know we're investigating him. Your career, maybe your freedom, it's all at risk. Maya thought about her armory, her routine, her carefully constructed invisible life. Then she met Tor's eyes with steady resolve. "Some shots are worth taking," she said, "no matter the risk." They worked through the night in Maya's armory, the fluorescent lights humming overhead as the bass settled into its midnight rhythm. Tors had pulled every favor he had to get temporary access to Maya's workspace, claiming he needed specialized weapons consultation. It gave them perhaps 12 hours before questions would be asked. Maya sat at her computer terminal, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she accessed armory databases she'd navigated thousands of times before. But now she was looking for patterns she'd deliberately avoided seeing, discrepancies that only someone with intimate knowledge of the weapons systems would notice. "Look at this," she said, pulling up ammunition requisition logs. "The experimental rounds I used for that shot, the official record shows 50 rounds manufactured. I had 5 for the mission, used 1. That leaves 44 unaccounted for." Tors moved behind her, studying the screen. Where did they go? According to this, they were transferred to DIA custody for continued testing and evaluation. Signed out by, her stomach dropped, Colonel Ashford, 3 days after my shot. She pulled up more records, cross-referencing serial numbers and transfer authorizations. But here's what doesn't make sense. I've been testing weapons for 6 years. Standard protocol is that experimental ammunition gets logged, tested, and results get filed with the manufacturer. But these rounds, no testing records exist except for the 200 rounds I fired during initial evaluation. Meaning Ashford didn't requisition those rounds for testing. He requisitioned them for use. Maya's mind raced through the implications. 44 rounds of the most advanced long-range ammunition ever produced disappeared into DIA custody with no oversight. Tors pulled out his notebook, adding this to his growing list of evidence. What could he do with ammunition like that? Maya pulled up the ballistic specifications. These rounds are unlike anything in the U.S. arsenal. The ballistic coefficient is 30% better than standard military ammunition. In practical terms, they extend effective range by almost 1,000 meters and maintain accuracy in conditions that would make normal shots impossible. She rotated her chair to face Tors. With ammunition like this and a competent shooter, you could eliminate targets that are supposed to be safe. Protected sites, fortified positions, anywhere that traditional snipers can't reach. You could conduct assassinations that look impossible, that no one would believe came from a human shooter. "He's building a private arsenal," Tors said, the pieces falling into place. "Not for military operations, for contract work. High-value targets, no questions asked, impossible shots that can't be traced." Maya pulled up another database, requisition orders from across the theater. "It's not just the ammunition. Look at this. Specialized optics, custom rifle components, advanced range-finding equipment. All requisitioned by Ashford or his direct subordinates over the past 18 months. Millions of dollars in equipment, officially for field testing and evaluation." She filtered the data and a pattern emerged. But none of this equipment ever gets returned. No test results, no evaluation reports, no accountability. It just disappears. Tors leaned closer, his eyes scanning the screen. "Can you track where these requisitions originated? Which bases, which units?" Maya's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up requisition chains and shipping manifests. What emerged made her blood run cold. 7 bases across Afghanistan and Iraq. But look at the authorization codes. They're all routed through the same 3 people. She highlighted the names. Colonel Richard Ashford, Major Frank Chen, Captain Sarah Vance. "I know Chen," Tors said grimly. "He's DIA, assigned to Kabul, supposed to be running counterintelligence operations, but Rangers have suspected for months that he's dirty. Too many operations get compromised right after Chen's briefed on them." "And Vance?" Army intelligence, stationed at Bagram. She handles logistics coordination for special operations. Torres pulled out his phone and sent a quick encrypted message. I have a contact who can dig into her background. Maya continued digging through the databases and suddenly stopped. Wait, look at this. She pulled up a personnel file. Major Chen signed out 3 of those experimental rifles, including Alpha 73, the one I used 2 weeks before my mission. Official reason: field evaluation by DIA assessment teams. But you had the rifle for 3 months before the shot, Torres said. Exactly, which means Chen's paperwork is backdated. He's creating false records to cover the weapon's real movement. Maya felt anger building, cutting through her fear. They've been running this operation for over a year, using the armory system as a way to funnel weapons and equipment to whoever they're really working for. Tor's phone buzzed. He read the message, his expression darkening. My contact confirms. Vance has offshore accounts receiving regular deposits from a shell company owned by Paladin Solutions. She's been on their payroll for at least 2 years while still drawing Army salary. Maya stood and moved to her weapon racks, pulling out one of the standard M2010 rifles. If they're building a private arsenal, they need shooters, people with skills but who won't ask questions. Or people they can control, Torres added. Like a weapons tech who's been invisible for 6 years, who has the skills but not the recognition. They gave you that shot to test you, Maya, to see if you could perform under pressure and keep quiet after. The realization hit her like a physical blow. I was an audition. And you passed perfectly, which means they'll come back to you. Ashford will have more missions, more impossible shots, each one deniable, each one untraceable. Torres moved beside her. Unless we stop them first. Maya's hands tightened on the rifle. We need more evidence. Something that directly ties Ashford to the ambush, to Marcus's team being compromised. I might have something, Torres said, returning to his tablet. He pulled up incident reports from the day of the ambush. Official story says Marcus's team was conducting routine reconnaissance when they were hit by a Taliban patrol. But look at the timeline. You're shot at 6:51 hours. First contact with Marcus's team at 6:52, less than 60 seconds later. Too fast, Maya said immediately. Even if the Taliban patrol heard my shot and responded, they couldn't have located and engaged a Ranger reconnaissance team in under a minute. Rangers are ghosts. They'd have gone to ground the moment they heard fire. Which means the Taliban were already in position, already knew where Marcus's team was hiding. Torres pulled up communications logs. And here's what's interesting. At 6:45 hours, 6 minutes before your shot, there was a burst transmission from this sector. Encrypted, brief, origin point classified. Maya felt pieces clicking into place. Someone radioed the Taliban, told them exactly where the Rangers were and when to hit them. They used my shot as the trigger signal. And only 7 people knew about your mission beforehand. Torres pulled out his list. Ashford, Chen, Vance, the master sergeant who spotted for you, the helicopter crew, 2 pilots, and whoever authorized the mission above Ashford. The master sergeant barely spoke, Maya remembered. But he was listening to communications. He had a radio unit I didn't recognize, more sophisticated than standard issue. Torres made a note. I need to find out who he was. If he was one of Ashford's people, he could have sent that transmission. Maya moved back to her computer, accessing different databases now. If they've been running this operation for 18 months, there should be other incidents, other missions that went wrong in suspicious ways. She pulled up after-action reports, incident logs, casualty reports, months of data from across the theater. Then she started filtering. Operations involving DIA coordination, missions where Ashford or his people had intelligence oversight, incidents where Rangers or Special Forces took unexpected casualties. The pattern that emerged was damning. 16 operations in the past year, Maya said, her voice hollow. All coordinated through Ashford's office. All resulted in either mission failure or friendly casualties. But in each case, a high-value target was also eliminated, someone who, like Nazari, had connections to mining rights, smuggling routes, or other financial interests. Torres came to stand beside her, reading over her shoulder. His face had gone pale. They've been using American forces as a cleanup crew. Set up missions, leak intel to make sure there's heavy contact, then eliminate whoever they actually wanted dead in the confusion. The American casualties are just collateral damage to them. 23 soldiers killed in these operations, Maya read from the casualty lists. 37 wounded. Also, Ashford and his people could secure contracts and eliminate business rivals. The anger in Tor's voice was cold as winter steel. Marcus figured this out. That's why he stayed in the mountains. He's not just hunting the Taliban who ambushed his team. He's hunting everyone involved in the betrayal, every person who traded American lives for profit. Maya was about to respond when her computer screen suddenly went dark. Then it flickered back to life, displaying a single message. Unauthorized access DETECTED. System Administrator NOTIFIED. Damn, Maya breathed. I tripped a monitoring program. Torres was already moving, gathering his papers and tablet. How long do we have? Minutes maybe. Depends who's monitoring and how seriously they take. The door to the armory burst open. Maya's commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Harrison, stood in the doorway with 2 military police behind him. His face was a mask of controlled fury. Staff Sergeant Reeves, step away from the terminal. Captain Torres, you're both coming with me. They were separated immediately. Maya was escorted to a windowless office in the base headquarters building while Torres was taken elsewhere. She sat alone for 2 hours, her mind racing through possible scenarios, before the door finally opened. Colonel Ashford walked in. He looked exactly as she remembered, mid-50s, steel-gray hair, eyes that revealed nothing. He carried a folder and set it on the table between them with deliberate care. Staff Sergeant Reeves, he said, his voice mild. We have a problem. Maya forced herself to meet his gaze to show nothing. Sir. Captain Torres has been making inquiries, inappropriate inquiries into classified operations. Ashford opened the folder, revealing copies of the documents she and Torres had been reviewing. He's apparently convinced you to help him access restricted databases and compromise operational security. I was assisting with a legitimate. You were violating direct orders, Ashford cut her off. Orders I personally gave you 3 months ago. The mission you participated in was classified at the highest levels. By discussing it with anyone, including Captain Torres, you've committed a serious breach. Maya's heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady. Captain Torres had authorization to consult with weapons specialists. I was providing technical information about ammunition that officially doesn't exist, about operations that are sealed under national security protocols. Ashford leaned forward. Maya, may I call you Maya? I understand Torres' story is compelling. He's looking for his brother and grief can make people desperate. But Marcus Webb was killed in action 3 months ago. This crusade Torres is on. It's just denial and he's dragging you down with him. Then why classify everything? Maya asked, unable to stop herself. Why seal the records if it was just another combat death? Ashford's expression didn't change. Because the operation you participated in was connected to broader intelligence gathering that's still ongoing. We can't risk exposure. Surely you understand operational security. He closed the folder and stood. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to cease all contact with Captain Torres effective immediately. Your security clearance is suspended pending a full review of your actions. You'll be confined to base while the investigation proceeds. Cooperate fully, accept responsibility for poor judgment, and this ends with a reprimand. Continue down this path. He let the threat hang unfinished. What about Captain Torres? Captain Torres is being sent back to his unit stateside. He's become a liability, and the army takes care of its own by removing them from situations where grief clouds their judgment. Ashford moved toward the door, then paused. You're a good soldier, Maya. You proved that 3 months ago. Don't throw away your career chasing ghosts. After he left, Maya sat alone in the silence, her mind working through everything. Ashford's visit wasn't just a warning, it was confirmation. They were getting too close, asking questions that threatened his operation. And now she was cut off from tours, from resources, from any ability to continue investigating. But Ashford had made one mistake. In trying to shut them down, he'd confirmed that Marcus was the real threat. Otherwise, why work so hard to convince Tours to give up the search? Maya stared at her reflection in the metal table surface and made her decision. She'd spent 6 years being invisible, being safe, following orders without question. That woman was gone now, killed by a single shot at 3,820 meters. When the MP came to escort her back to her quarters, Maya was already planning how to get off the base and into the mountains. Because if Ashford was this desperate to stop the investigation, it meant Marcus was close to exposing the whole conspiracy. And Maya wasn't about to let a ranger fight alone. Maya's quarters felt like a prison cell, though technically she wasn't under arrest. Just confined to base pending investigation, a bureaucratic way of saying she was trapped. An MP was stationed outside her door, checking on her every hour. Her phone had been confiscated, her computer access revoked, her movements restricted to a 50-meter radius around her barracks. But Ashford had underestimated one critical factor. Maya had spent 6 years learning every inch of this base, every routine, every blind spot in the security system. When you're invisible, you see things others don't. She lay on her bunk, staring at the ceiling, counting seconds. The MP outside made his rounds with military precision, every 60 minutes like clockwork. At 200 hours, he'd be replaced by a fresh guard, and during that 3-minute transition there would be a gap. Small, but enough. Maya had spent the day mentally cataloging what she'd need. She couldn't access the armory. That would be the first place they'd look. But she'd been living on this base for 6 years, training soldiers, running weapons courses. She knew where the backup equipment was stored, knew which supply rooms had faulty locks, knew which sergeants kept personal gear stashes that wouldn't be inventoried until the next inspection cycle. At 1:57 hours, she heard voices outside, the shift change beginning early. Perfect. Maya moved silently to her window, already dressed in civilian hiking clothes she'd kept buried in her locker. The window had been painted shut years ago, but she'd quietly worked it loose that afternoon using a metal nail file. The frame slid open with barely a whisper. Maya pulled herself through, dropped to the ground, and immediately moved into the shadows between buildings. Her heart hammered, but her training took over. Stay low, move deliberately, use the darkness. She reached Building 7, the old supply depot that housed training equipment. The lock was standard issue, and Maya had learned years ago that the third tumbler stuck. She worked it with practiced efficiency, and the door swung open. Inside, she moved by memory to the back corner where Staff Sergeant Rodriguez kept his personal mountain gear, equipment he used for weekend climbs when off duty. Maya filled a civilian backpack, climbing rope, carabiners, a GPS unit, cold weather gear, energy bars, water purification tablets. From another locker, she retrieved a civilian hunting rifle, a Remington 700 in .308 that belonged to a sergeant who'd been deployed to Kandahar. Not as sophisticated as her military equipment, but accurate and reliable. She took 3 boxes of ammunition. The hardest part was leaving. Every instinct screamed that she was destroying her career, her life, everything she'd built. But then she thought about 23 dead soldiers, about Marcus Webb alone in the mountains, about Ashford's cold eyes promising silence or consequences. Some things were worth more than safety. Maya exited through the back and moved along the perimeter fence to a section she'd identified months ago during a routine patrol, a spot where maintenance had cut the chain link to install new communications cables and the repair had been sloppy. She squeezed through, and suddenly she was off base, unauthorized, officially AWOL. No turning back now. She moved quickly through the darkness toward a prearranged extraction point, a road intersection 2 kilometers away. Tors had given her contingency plans during their brief time together, backup options in case they were separated. He'd mentioned a contact, a former ranger who ran logistics for private contractors and owed Tors his life from a mission gone wrong in Helmand Province. Maya reached the intersection at 2:43 hours and waited in a drainage ditch, her rifle across her knees. Every vehicle that passed made her tense, expecting military police, expecting pursuit. But she'd left no trace, no indication of which direction she'd gone. At 3:11 hours, a battered Toyota pickup pulled up, headlights flashing twice. Maya emerged from cover, approaching cautiously until she saw the driver, a man in his 40s with the weathered look of someone who'd spent too many years in combat zones. "You Reeves," his accent was pure Texas. "Depends who's asking." "Name's Cooper. Dave Tors pulled me out of a shitstorm in 21, said if I ever got a call from him I'd drop everything." He gestured to the passenger seat. "You common or not?" Maya climbed in, and Cooper accelerated away from the base. "Tors is waiting at a safe house 20 clicks from here. Managed to slip his escort about 3 hours ago. They're probably tearing apart Bagram looking for him right now." "How did he?" "Kid's a ranger. They don't train him to sit still when there's a mission." Cooper navigated the dark roads with practiced ease. "He filled me in on some of it. Sounds like you two kicked over one hell of a hornet's nest." "That's one way to put it." They drove in silence for 20 minutes, finally turning onto a dirt road that led to a compound surrounded by high walls. Cooper flashed his lights in a specific pattern, and the gate opened. Inside, Tors was waiting, looking somehow even more exhausted than before but with fierce determination in his eyes. "You made it," he said as Maya climbed out of the truck. "Barely. How long before they connect us?" "We have maybe 12 hours before they figure out we're together and start a serious manhunt." Tors led her into a small room where maps and equipment were already laid out. "After that, Ashford will know we're going after Marcus, and he'll move heaven and earth to stop us." Maya studied the maps, detailed topographical charts of the Cunnar and Petch valleys, marked with Tors notes about Marcus's suspected movements. "You have a route planned?" "Best guess based on Marcus's pattern. He's been moving northwest, eliminating targets in sequence. The last confirmed hit was here." He pointed to a village near the Pakistan border, 5 days ago. "If the pattern holds, his next target is somewhere in this valley system." Cooper set down cups of coffee for both of them. "I can get you to this village here." He indicated a spot on the map. "But after that, you're on foot in some of the most hostile terrain in Afghanistan. Taliban controls most of it, and from what Tors says, Ashford's got contractors in the area looking for your boy." "What about supplies?" Maya asked. Tors gestured to several duffel bags. "Cooper's been collecting gear since I called him. We've got everything we need for 2 weeks in the mountains: food, water, medical supplies, communications equipment, and weapons." He unzipped one bag, revealing 2 M4 carbines, a precision rifle with advanced optics, ammunition, grenades, and body armor. Not quite military spec, but close enough. Maya picked up the precision rifle, a custom build in .300 Winchester Magnum, not as advanced as the experimental weapon she'd used, but quality work. "Where did you get this?" "Better you don't know," Cooper said with a slight smile. "Let's just say there's a thriving market for quality equipment if you know where to look and don't ask questions." Tors spread out reconnaissance photos. These were taken 2 days ago by a contractor drone, not military, so they're not in official databases. Look here." He pointed to a ridge overlooking a valley. "That's a perfect observation position. Natural cover, 3 escape routes, commanding view of the approaches. It's exactly where I'd set up if I were Marcus." Maya studied the position, her tactical mind analyzing angles and distances. "It's also exposed to fire from this ridge to the east. Anyone watching that position could pin down whoever's there. Which is why we approach from the north, using this river valley for concealment." Torres traced a route with his finger. "It'll take us 3 days of hard movement, but we can stay off the major trails where Taliban and contractors will be looking." "You're assuming Marcus is still alive," Maya said quietly. "If Ashford's contractors found him." "They didn't." Tor's certainty was absolute. "I know my brother. He spent years training to survive behind enemy lines. And more than that, he has a purpose. He's not just surviving, he's hunting. Men with purpose don't give up easily." Cooper checked his watch. "You need to move within the hour. Sun comes up at 5:30, and you want to be well clear of this area before then. I've got a vehicle that'll get you to the drop point, and from there, you're ghosts." Maya looked at Torres, seeing the same decision reflected in his eyes that she'd made herself. They were crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed: desertion, theft of military equipment, unauthorized operations in a combat zone. If they succeeded, they might be vindicated. If they failed, they'd face court-martial or worse. "Let's do this," she said. An hour later, as the first hints of dawn touched the eastern horizon, Maya and Torres moved through a mountain pass, leaving civilization behind. They carried 60 pounds of equipment each, weapons at the ready, moving in tactical formation like they'd trained together for years instead of days. Behind them, the world they knew, the safety of military structure, the comfort of following orders, the invisibility of routine. Ahead, mountains that had swallowed armies for thousands of years, a conspiracy that had already killed over 20 soldiers, and somewhere in the wilderness, a ghost hunting ghosts. Maya adjusted her pack and kept moving. 6 years of being invisible, of being safe, of avoiding pressure and expectations. But some shots demanded to be taken, no matter the cost, and this was one of them. As they climbed higher, the base disappeared from view, and Staff Sergeant Maya Reeves officially became a fugitive. But for the first time in 6 years, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The hunt had begun. The Hindu Kush Mountains were merciless. For 3 days, Maya and Torres pushed through terrain that tested every limit of their endurance. The air at altitude was thin enough to make each breath feel insufficient, and temperatures swung from scorching midday heat to near-freezing nights. They moved during twilight hours, dawn and dusk, when shadows provided concealment but enough light remained to navigate the treacherous paths. Maya's legs burned from the constant climbing, muscles protesting every step. She'd stayed fit running the base perimeter and maintaining PT standards, but this was different. This was combat conditioning she'd never needed as a weapons technician. Torres moved ahead with the fluid confidence of someone born to this kind of movement, occasionally glancing back to ensure she kept pace. "Drink," he ordered during a brief rest on the second day, handing her a water bottle. "Dehydration kills faster than bullets up here." Maya drank, her hands blistered from gripping rock faces during their ascent. They were following a route Torres had plotted from Marcus's suspected movement pattern, staying off established trails where Taliban patrols operated, using river beds and ridge lines that offered both concealment and observation. On the afternoon of the third day, they reached a village clinging to a mountainside like a handful of stone boxes scattered by a careless giant. Torres signaled for Maya to stay hidden in an outcropping while he approached alone. She watched through her rifle scope as he spoke with an elderly man outside a tea house, money quietly changing hands. 20 minutes later, Torres returned, his expression tight with controlled excitement. "He's here," Or was 2 days ago. Torres pulled out his map marking a location. The locals call him the American Ghost, says he moves through the mountains like wind, never stays in one place. But he's been seen near this valley system, watching a compound used by a man named Hamid Gul. Who's Gul? Maya asked. Local warlord with connections to Taliban leadership. But according to my contact, Gul also has satellite communications equipment, unusual for someone supposedly allied with the Taliban who prefer low-tech solutions. Tor's eyes were hard. I think Gul is one of Ashford's intermediaries, someone who can pass intelligence from American sources to Taliban fighters without the connection being obvious. Maya studied the map. The compound was in a valley 3 kilometers away, surrounded by high ground that would make any approach treacherous. If Marcus is watching Gul, he'll have positioned himself somewhere with clear sight lines and multiple escape routes. Which is why we're not looking for the compound, we're looking for where a ranger would observe it from. Torres pulled out reconnaissance photos Cooper had provided. Marcus trained me. I know how he thinks, how he positions himself. If I were him, I'd be here. He pointed to a ridge overlooking the valley, with secondary positions here and here. They moved out as the sun began its descent, using the gathering shadows for cover. The approach took hours of careful movement, testing each step before committing weight, staying below ridge lines to avoid being silhouetted against the sky. Maya's senses were hyper-alert. Every sound could be a Taliban patrol, every shadow could hide an enemy. As they neared the primary observation position Torres had identified, Maya spotted something that made her freeze. She tapped Tor's shoulder and pointed. Barely visible among the rocks was a fighting position, carefully constructed, naturally camouflaged, with clear fields of fire down into the valley. But it was abandoned. Torres examined the position, his hands reading the space like a text. He was here, recently, within the last 12 hours. See how the rocks are arranged. Classic ranger hide site. And look, he brushed aside some stones, revealing an empty ammunition box. .308 Winchester, Marcus's preferred caliber. Why would he abandon a perfect position? Maya whispered. Because he's already hit his target, or Torres went still, his hand moving to his rifle. Because he knew someone was coming. A voice spoke from the shadows behind them, rough from disuse but unmistakably American. Drop the weapons, slowly, then turn around with your hands visible. Maya's heart hammered as she complied, setting down her rifle and raising her hands. Beside her, Torres did the same, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, coiled and ready despite the order. Marcus, Torres said quietly, "It's me, it's David." Silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Then, "Dave, what the hell are you doing here?" A figure emerged from concealment so perfect Maya hadn't seen any sign of it. A man in worn tactical gear, face obscured by a full beard, eyes hollow but burning with intensity. He looked like something carved from the mountains themselves, wild and dangerous. "Looking for you, little brother," Tor's voice cracked slightly. "The army said you were KIA." Marcus Webb lowered his rifle but didn't approach, his eyes scanning the area with paranoid vigilance. "The army says a lot of things. Who's she?" "Staff Sergeant Maya Reeves. She's the one who made the shot that day, the 3,820-meter shot that killed Nazari." Marcus's gaze snapped to Maya, something shifting in his expression. "You made that shot?" Maya nodded, finding her voice. "I didn't know about your team. I was told it was a clean operation, no friendlies in the area." "It wasn't your fault." Marcus's attention returned to scanning their surroundings. "That shot saved my life. When Nazari dropped, the whole valley went into chaos. The Taliban hit us 30 seconds later. They were already in position, waiting. But the confusion from your shot gave me a window. I went over the ridge, rolled down into a ravine, played dead among the rocks while they searched." Torres took a careful step forward. "Why didn't you come back?" "Because someone set us up, Dave. Someone knew we'd be watching that meeting, knew exactly where my team would position ourselves. They arranged the ambush and used that shot as the trigger. Marcus's jaw clenched. 2 of my Rangers died in the first 30 seconds. Jackson and Rodriguez, good men, both of them. And for what? So Ashford could eliminate a business rival. You know about Ashford? Maya asked. I figured it out after a week in the mountains. Stayed hidden, watched, listened. Taliban fighters were celebrating, but they were also confused, said an American colonel had given them the coordinates for the watchers on the ridge. Took me 2 months to confirm it was Ashford. Marcus finally moved closer, his movements still wary. I've been hunting everyone involved ever since. The Taliban fighters who pulled the triggers, the intermediaries who passed the intelligence, the warlords who enabled it. Working my way up the chain. Torres gestured to the valley below. Gull. He's the communications hub. Passes encrypted messages between Ashford and Taliban leadership, coordinates intelligence transfers. I've been watching him for 3 days, mapping his security, identifying patterns. Marcus's eyes hardened. Tonight, I was going to kill him and extract his communications equipment. Proof of Ashford's network. We can help, Maya said. We have evidence too, requisition records, financial transactions, testimony about the shot, combined with what you've gathered. It won't be enough. Marcus cut her off. Ashford has protection at every level. He's DIA, which means he operates with minimal oversight. He's been running this network for years, and he's got people embedded throughout the command structure. If I come back now with just testimony and paper trails, I'll disappear into a black site before I can testify. Then what's your plan? Torres demanded. Stay out here forever, killing people one by one until Ashford sends enough contractors to take you down. My plan is to get the one piece of evidence that can't be ignored or buried. Marcus pulled out a battered tablet, its screen cracked but functional. Ashford's been communicating with someone higher up the chain, someone in the Pentagon who's been protecting him. I've intercepted fragments of their communications through Gull's equipment, but I need the full encryption keys to decode them. Those keys are on Gull's satellite system. Maya felt pieces clicking into place. If you can prove someone in Pentagon leadership is involved, it becomes too big to bury. Exactly, but getting to that equipment means going through 24 fighters, sophisticated security systems, and doing it quietly enough that Gull doesn't destroy the evidence before I can extract it. Marcus looked at his brother, then at Maya. Which is impossible for one person, but 3 people with the right skills. We're in, Torres said immediately. Marcus studied them both, and Maya saw the weight of 3 months alone in those eyes, the isolation, the constant threat, the burden of being betrayed by his own command. This isn't a military operation. We have no backup, no support, no extraction if things go wrong. If we're caught, we'll be killed or disappeared. And even if we succeed, we'll all face court-martial. I've been AWOL for 3 days and stole enough equipment to arm a platoon, Maya said. I'm already facing court-martial. Might as well make it count. A ghost of a smile crossed Marcus's face, the first human expression she'd seen from him. Dave, you found yourself a weapons tech with a spine. That shot at 3,820 meters wasn't luck, was it? State champion long-range shooter, Torres said, 3 years running. Good, because where we're going, we might need another impossible shot. Marcus shouldered his pack. Sun sets in 2 hours. We move in 4 when the guards are tired and complacent. I'll brief you on the compound layout and security patterns on the way to our staging position. As they prepared to move, Marcus placed a hand on Tor's shoulder, a brief moment of connection between brothers who'd thought they'd lost each other. I'm glad you came, Marcus said quietly. I wasn't sure I'd make it out of this alone. Rangers don't leave Rangers behind, Torres replied, even when they're too stubborn to ask for help. Maya checked her rifle and adjusted her gear, her mind already running calculations. 3 months ago, she'd made one impossible shot that changed everything. Tonight, She'd help execute an impossible mission that could expose a conspiracy reaching the highest levels of military command. The weapons tech who'd wanted only to be invisible was about to assault a fortified compound in hostile territory. Alongside a ghost everyone thought was dead, and a captain who'd sacrificed everything for his brother. Some missions chose you, whether you wanted them or not. And some shots were worth taking, no matter how impossible they seemed. The compound sat in the valley like a fortress, stone walls 12 feet high surrounding 3 buildings clustered around a central courtyard. Marcus had been observing for 3 days, and his intelligence was precise. 22 fighters, rotating guard shifts every 4 hours, a generator building housing the satellite communications equipment, and Hamid Gul himself in the main residence. They waited in a rocky outcropping 400 meters from the compound as the sun disappeared behind the western peaks. Maya studied the layout through her scope, counting guards, noting weapon positions, calculating angles of fire. 2 guards at the main gate, 3 on the walls, she whispered, plus the roving patrol that circles every 12 minutes. Generator building is here, Marcus pointed on a hand-drawn map, northeast corner, steel door, but the ventilation system has an access point on the roof. That's our entry. Torres checked his watch. Guard change in 6 minutes. That's when we move. They'll be distracted during the transition. Dave, you're with me on entry, Marcus said. Maya, you take the overwatch position on that ridge. You've got 3 jobs. Cover our approach, take out the guard tower if we're compromised, and watch for reinforcements from the village. Maya nodded, already moving to her position. She climbed quickly, muscle memory from 3 days of mountain movement making her efficient despite exhaustion. The ridge offered a clear view of the compound and surrounding approaches, perfect for her skills. She settled into a natural depression in the rocks, arranging stones for a stable shooting platform, and extended the bipod on her rifle. Range to the compound, 380 meters. Wind from the northwest at approximately 8 kilometers per hour. Elevation advantage of 43 meters. She dialed in the adjustments, her breathing steadying into the rhythm that had won her championships. In position, she whispered into her radio. Copy, moving in 30 seconds, Marcus replied. Maya watched through her scope as the brothers moved like shadows across the open ground, using every depression and rock for concealment. They reached the compound wall just as the guard change began, voices calling out from the courtyard, attention focused inward. Marcus produced climbing equipment, a grappling hook wrapped in cloth to muffle sound. One throw and it caught on the wall's edge. They climbed quickly, dropping into the shadows on the far side. Maya's crosshairs tracked their movement, ready to engage any threat. So far clean. The brothers reached the generator building, and Marcus climbed to the roof while Torres provided security. Maya watched Marcus work on the ventilation grate, his movements methodical and precise. 30 seconds later, he'd opened it and disappeared inside. Torres followed. Maya breathed slowly, scanning for threats. The tower guards were lighting cigarettes, sloppy discipline. The roving patrol had stopped to talk with men in the courtyard. Everything was going according to. Her radio crackled. Contact, we've got a problem, Marcus's voice urgent. Then gunfire erupted inside the compound. The courtyard exploded into chaos. Fighters poured from buildings, weapons up, converging on the generator building. The tower guards swung their PKM machine guns toward the northeast corner. Maya didn't hesitate. Her first shot took the northern tower guard through the chest at 385 meters. He dropped without a sound. Second shot, southern tower guard, 392 meters, center mass. He fell backward off the platform. Tower's clear, she transmitted. You've got 15 fighters converging on your position. More gunfire from inside the generator building. Through her scope, Maya saw muzzle flashes in the windows. Torres and Marcus were pinned down. Fighters were stacking up at the door, preparing to breach. Maya engaged systematically. Lead fighter at the door, 380 meters. Drop. Second fighter moving to flank, 395 meters. Drop. Third fighter taking position behind a vehicle, 403 meters. She adjusted for the greater distance, exhaled, squeezed. The fighter collapsed. Maya were compromised. Tor's voice was strained. They knew we were coming, this was a trap. Her blood went cold. Before she could respond, movement on the western approach caught her eye. Vehicles, 3 Toyota Technicals mounting heavy weapons, racing toward the compound. Not Taliban trucks. These were professional tactical vehicles. Contractors. Ashford's kill team. You've got reinforcements incoming, Maya transmitted. 3 vehicles heavily armed 60 seconds out. We've got the equipment, Marcus replied, but we're pinned, can't extract. Maya's mind raced through options. The contractors would arrive, lock down the compound, and Tors and Marcus would be trapped. She needed to buy them time, needed to. The lead technical was 800 meters out and closing fast. Standard range for her rifle, but the vehicle was moving at speed, bouncing over rough terrain. Not an impossible shot, but difficult. She steadied her breathing, tracked the target, led it by 3 meters to account for movement. Squeezed. The driver's window shattered. The technical swerved violently, rolled, and erupted in flames as fuel ignited. The other 2 vehicles scattered, taking evasive action, but they'd been slowed. Exit through the eastern wall, Marcus transmitted. We're blowing our way out, get ready to move. An explosion rocked the compound, shaped charges blowing a hole in the stone wall. Maya saw the brothers emerge through the smoke and dust, Marcus carrying a bulky equipment case, Tors providing cover fire. But Tors was moving wrong, favoring his left side. Blood darkened his tactical vest. Tors is hit, she transmitted, already repositioning. I'm coming down. Negative, Marcus's voice was sharp. Stay in position, we need cover fire. The remaining 2 technicals had recovered, circling to cut off the brothers' escape route. Fighters from the compound were reorganizing, streaming through the breach after Tors and Marcus. The brothers were exposed in open ground, taking fire from multiple directions. Maya forced herself to stay calm, to let her training take over. She engaged the pursuing fighters, 4 quick shots, 4 men down. But the technicals were the real threat, their mounted guns capable of shredding the brothers in seconds. Then she saw him. In the passenger seat of the second technical, illuminated briefly by muzzle flashes, Colonel Richard Ashford. He was here, personally overseeing the operation, so confident in his trap that he'd come to witness the elimination of the witnesses himself. The technical was accelerating toward Tors and Marcus, 700 meters from Maya's position and closing. The mounted gunner was traversing his weapon, about to open fire. She had seconds. Maya's world narrowed to the scope, the target, the mathematics of death. 700 meters to a moving target in fading light, wind variable, target bobbing over rough terrain. Not impossible, just improbable. She tracked the technical's movement, predicted its course, calculated lead time. Her heartbeat slowed. Breathe in. Exhale halfway. Hold. The crosshairs settled on Ashford's head, leading the movement by 4 meters. Squeeze. The rifle's report echoed off the mountains. Through her scope, Maya watched the bullet's trajectory, 0.7 of a second of flight time that felt like forever. Then impact. Ashford's head snapped back, and the technical swerved wildly as the driver reacted. The vehicle hit a boulder and flipped, the mounted gunner thrown clear. The third technical, seeing its command vehicle destroyed, hesitated, that fatal moment of uncertainty in combat. Marcus took advantage, firing a 4-beam grenade from his underslung launcher. The grenade struck the technical's engine block, and the vehicle exploded in a fireball. Moving to you, Maya transmitted, already running down the ridge, abandoning stealth for speed. She reached the brothers 3 minutes later, finding Tors on his knees, Marcus trying to staunch bleeding from a wound in Tors' side. The equipment case lay nearby, somehow intact despite everything. "How bad?" Maya demanded, dropping beside them. "Through and through missed major organs," Marcus said, his voice tight. "But he's losing blood fast and we're 3 days from medical care." Maya pulled combat gauze from her pack, pressing it into the wound while Marcus worked on the exit wound. Tors' face was pale, his breathing shallow, but his eyes were focused. "Did you get him?" Tors managed. "Ashford's dead," Maya confirmed. "Saw the impact myself." "Good," Tors tried to smile. "That's one hell of a shot." Marcus secured the bandages, then looked at Maya with new respect. 700 meters on a moving target in combat conditions. That state championship wasn't just luck. "We need to move," Maya said, helping Tors to his feet. "That explosion will draw every fighter in the valley." They moved as quickly as Tors' condition allowed, Marcus carrying both his pack and the equipment case, Maya providing rear security. Behind them, the compound burned, Ashford's body cooling in the wreckage of his ambitions. But Maya knew the fight wasn't over. Ashford might be dead, but his conspiracy reached higher, into the Pentagon itself, according to the intelligence Marcus had intercepted. The equipment case held the evidence that could expose everything, but first they had to survive long enough to deliver it. As they climbed into the mountains, the sound of pursuit grew behind them, engines revving, voices shouting orders. More contractors, more Taliban fighters drawn by the battle. They had miles to go through hostile territory with a wounded man and evidence that powerful people would kill to suppress. Maya adjusted Tors' weight on her shoulder and kept moving. 6 years ago, she'd enlisted to become invisible, to hide from expectations and pressure. Now she was carrying a wounded ranger through enemy mountains, having just killed a colonel and exposed a conspiracy that had murdered over 20 American soldiers. Some transformations happened in an instant, a single shot that changes everything. Others happen step by painful step, carrying your brothers through the darkness, because that's what real soldiers did. Either way, Staff Sergeant Maya Reeves was done being invisible. The night stretched ahead, full of danger and uncertainty. But for the first time in 6 years, Maya felt absolutely certain she was exactly where she needed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. And they were going to make it out, together. Because impossible was just another word for difficult, and she'd built her entire life on making the difficult look easy. The extraction took 4 days of hell. Tors' condition worsened on the second day, fever spiking, infection setting in despite their best efforts. Maya and Marcus took turns carrying him, moving through mountain passes while contractors and Taliban fighters scoured the valleys below. Twice they had to hide in caves, barely breathing, as search parties passed within meters of their position. On the third day, Marcus made contact with Cooper using a satellite phone salvaged from the equipment case. "We're coming out," he transmitted in brief, encrypted bursts, "but we're not going to military authorities. Not yet." Cooper understood. "I've got friends, journalists, congressmen who aren't on anyone's payroll. You get to me, I'll make sure your evidence reaches people who can't be silenced." They emerged from the mountains on the 4th day, more dead than alive. Cooper was waiting with a medical team at a safe house across the Pakistani border, technically illegal, but none of them cared about technicalities anymore. Tors was rushed into surgery while Maya and Marcus collapsed from exhaustion. When Maya woke 12 hours later, Marcus was sitting beside her cot, the equipment case open on a table, cables connecting it to multiple computers. A woman Maya didn't recognize was working at the keyboards, mid-40s, sharp eyes, the intensity of someone who'd spent a career hunting truth. "Amanda Price," the woman introduced herself. "Investigative journalist, Washington Post. Cooper called me, said you have something that'll bring down some very powerful people." "We have evidence of a conspiracy," Marcus said, his voice rough but steady. Colonel Richard Ashford, now deceased, was running an operation that used American military forces to eliminate business rivals and secure mining contracts. He coordinated with Taliban forces, leaked intelligence that got American soldiers killed, and built a network of corruption reaching into Pentagon leadership. Price leaned forward. "Can you prove it?" Marcus gestured to the computer screens. This equipment belonged to Hamid Gul, Ashford's primary intermediary. It contains 18 months of encrypted communications between Ashford and his network, including messages from someone using the codename Olympus. "Who's Olympus?" "We're about to find out." Marcus typed commands, and encrypted files began scrolling across the screen. "The encryption keys were on this equipment. Give me a few hours and I'll have everything decoded." It took 3 hours. When the files finally opened, what they revealed was worse than anyone had imagined. Olympus was Brigadier General Robert Keller, Deputy Director of Defense Intelligence. He'd been running the entire operation, using Ashford as his field commander, orchestrating a network that had killed 37 American soldiers over 18 months while securing over $400 million in mining contracts for companies he had financial interests in through shell corporations. The evidence was irrefutable. Communications, financial records, operational orders, even recordings of conversations where Keller and Ashford discussed acceptable casualties and necessary eliminations. Maya felt sick reading the transcripts. These men had traded American lives like commodity futures, calculating profit margins against body counts. Price worked through the night, verifying sources, cross-referencing documents, building an airtight case. At dawn, she made calls to the Pentagon Inspector General, the Senate Armed Services Committee, and the FBI. "I'm publishing in 6 hours," she told each one. "You can get ahead of it by opening investigations now, or you can explain to America why you ignored a military corruption scandal that killed 37 soldiers." The shitstorm that followed was biblical. Within 12 hours, General Keller was arrested. Within 24 hours, Major Chen and Captain Vance were in custody, along with 17 other officers and contractors connected to the conspiracy. The evidence was too extensive, too well documented, too public for the usual cover-ups to work. But Maya, Marcus, and Torres still faced their own reckoning. The military police arrived at the safe house on the 5th day. Maya expected handcuffs and charges. Instead, the lead investigator, a colonel from Army CID, read them their rights, then said, "You're not under arrest. You're being transported to a secure facility for debriefing pending investigation into your actions." The debriefing lasted 3 weeks. Maya, Marcus, and Torres were separated, questioned repeatedly, their stories verified against the evidence and each other's testimony. Army lawyers explained that while they technically violated numerous regulations, AWOL, theft of equipment, unauthorized operations, the context of exposing a massive criminal conspiracy complicated prosecution. "Frankly," one lawyer said privately to Maya, "the Army wants this to go away. Prosecuting you three would mean a public trial where all of this gets aired again. The media would have a field day. Army prosecutes heroes who exposed corruption, not a good look." The compromise came after 4 weeks. General dismissal of all AWOL and theft charges in exchange for full cooperation with ongoing investigations. No courts-martial, no criminal records, but also no guarantees about their military careers. Then the Pentagon Review Board convened. Maya sat in a hearing room, facing a panel of generals and civilian officials. They'd reviewed everything: her service record, the evidence she'd gathered, testimony from Torres and Marcus, the shot that killed Ashford, the entire operation that exposed the conspiracy. General Patricia Morrison, the board chair, studied Maya with keen eyes. "Staff Sergeant Reeves, your service record prior to these events was exemplary but unremarkable. 6 years as a weapons technician, satisfactory performance, no disciplinary issues. Yet you made a world record shot at 3,820 meters, then another combat shot at 700 meters on a moving target. You conducted unauthorized intelligence gathering, went AWOL to pursue a target in hostile territory, and participated in an assault on a fortified compound. That's quite a transformation. Yes, ma'am, Maya said simply. Why throw away a safe, comfortable career? Maya thought about that question, really thought about it. Because I spent 6 years being invisible, ma'am. I was a 3-time national champion long-range shooter before I enlisted, but I buried those skills because I was afraid of expectations, afraid of pressure. I chose safety over purpose. Then I was ordered to make a shot that killed a man and got Rangers ambushed. I couldn't stay invisible after that. Not when I knew the truth. Not when I could do something about it. Morrison exchanged glances with other board members. The shot that killed Colonel Ashford, 700 meters on a moving target in combat conditions. Your after-action report describes it as necessary to protect friendly forces. Some might call it revenge. Some might, Maya acknowledged. I call it justice. Ashford betrayed his country, got 37 soldiers killed for profit, and was personally leading a kill team to eliminate Rangers who discovered his crimes. I took the shot because it needed to be taken. Silence stretched for a long moment. Then Morrison's expression shifted, not quite a smile, but something approaching respect. Staff Sergeant Reeves, this board has reviewed your case extensively. While your methods were unorthodox and technically violated numerous regulations, the result was exposing the largest military corruption scandal in a generation. 37 murdered soldiers have justice because of you. She opened a folder. This board recommends the following. First, full dismissal of all charges related to your unauthorized actions. Second, commendation for valor in combat operations. Third, she looked up, assignment to the newly formed Special Operations Long-Range Precision Division. We're building a unit that combines technical expertise with operational capability, people who can think and shoot. We need soldiers who understand that sometimes the rules exist to be broken in service of larger truths. Maya felt tears threatening but held them back. Ma'am, I'm honored, but I'm just a weapons tech. No, Morrison said firmly. You were a weapons tech who was afraid to be more. Now you're a soldier who proved that technical expertise and combat capability aren't separate skills, they're complementary. And we need more soldiers like you. The assignment came through 2 weeks later. Maya reported to a classified facility where she found herself among an elite group, former snipers, intelligence specialists, engineers, all selected for their ability to solve problems that standard military doctrine couldn't address. Her first day, her new commander, a quiet colonel with Ranger tabs, laid out the mission. We handle situations where impossible is the starting point. Long-range precision operations, technical intelligence gathering, missions where thinking matters as much as shooting. Your job is to train the next generation and lead operations when called upon. Marcus received the Silver Star and was returned to active duty with the Rangers. His death, officially explained as a classified deep cover operation. Torres was promoted to Major and assigned to the same unit as Maya, his experience and dedication earning him a leadership role. 3 months after the conspiracy's exposure, Maya stood before a new class of students at the facility. 20 faces looked back at her, all skilled soldiers, all selected for exceptional technical and tactical abilities. My name is Captain Maya Reeves, she began, still getting used to the rank she'd received along with her new assignment. 6 months ago, I was a weapons technician who spent 6 years being invisible, avoiding attention, hiding skills I was afraid to use. Today, I'm standing here because I learned that invisible doesn't mean safe. It just means unprepared when the moment comes that demands everything you have. She pulled up a topographical map on the screen behind her. This is where I made a 3,820-meter shot that changed my life. I'm going to teach you how to make shots like that. But more importantly, I'm going to teach you that distance shooting isn't just about pulling triggers. It's about mathematics, physics, meteorology, ballistics, and most critically, having the courage to take the shot when everything in you says it's impossible. As she began the lesson, Maya caught her reflection in a window. No longer the invisible weapons tech hiding from expectations, but a combat-proven soldier teaching others to embrace their own impossible moments. Some transformations happened in a single shot. Others happen across months of danger, sacrifice, and choosing purpose over safety. Either way, Staff Sergeant Maya Reeves, now Captain Maya Reeves, had finally stopped being invisible. And she was exactly where she was meant to be. The end.
Vero. Chiedo scusa per i 4 lunedì di fila che io ho saltato, ma uno è stato male Yuki, uno sono stato male io, uno era festa e uno sono stronzo. Quindi chiedo scusa per un lunedì saltato. Però ve l'avevo detto che dal mese scorso in poi avrei tirato dritto e lo stiamo facendo. Buongiorno Magre, ciao cucciolo. Buongiorno Cutolino, ciao tesoro. Sono stato sabatato, sei stato sabotato, sei stato patatato. Buongiorno Cutolino, come stai tesoro? Bella Ozzy, bella Fre, bella gang in the ship.